Hello guys, it's Kasim. How you doing? I hope your week is going all right. I hope you're okay. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're working out, lifting weights, getting big, looking hot, looking sexy. Okay, cool. So I wanted to talk about something which I saw online, which I wanted to give my opinions on, and I hope in some way it can add some value to you, help maybe get you to think about something in your life. But the question was, why are there so many single men than women? And I've been thinking about this, and I just wanted to give you my perspective. But before we get into that, guys, if you want to help me get to 1,000 subscribers by June by supporting me, please can you like and subscribe to my channel and like this video. It's good for the algorithm or something like that, so you'd be an absolute legend. Okay, cool. So let's get into this. Right. So why are there so many more men than there are women? I wrote down a number of things. Let me share them with you. So number one, what I have found is that we have a Chad problem. I call it the Chad problem. And what I mean by this is pretty much most women want a select few type of man. So if we went across the UK and we asked women or pretty much most women what they wanted from a man, if they could have their ideal man, most women would say something like this: I want a guy who's 6'2", a guy who's athletic, a guy who is well educated, a family man, a guy who's got a big dick, a guy who's good looking, and a guy who's got a good income. So essentially, pretty much if I give you a picture of what women are looking for, the women are either looking for a David Beckham or they're looking for an Idris Elba. Most women, now I say that there's always an exception to every rule. There are some women who don't like David Beckham, it's not their cup of tea, and there are some women who don't like Idris Elba because he's just not their cup of tea. But on average, if I ask women, you know, these two men would fit in the category for most women. If these two men approached the average woman in the UK and they said they wanted to take the woman out, most women would say yes. So the issue that you've got is most women are looking for that kind of a guy. Here's the problem. Most men don't fit in that category. Most men don't go into, don't look like that. They don't have those requirements that most women want. And so the issue that you've got is all of the women all go still for those guys, and those guys have the majority of the women. Right, so it was interesting for me when I was looking at Tinder's data. Tinder basically shows data that says that 80% of all the women on Tinder go for 20% of certain profiles, and all the men are pretty much these characteristics that I said. They're about 6'4", 6'2". They're athletic, they're well educated, they've got a big jawline, they're good looking, they've got a big dick, right? And so basically most women are going for these guys. And so the majority of men have no women to basically go for, which obviously is part of the reason why there are so many single men than there are women, right? A lot of these women, and this was actually one of the big shocks for me, because what I didn't know is women are prepared to share these men. Even if they're willing to date the bad boy, in other words, women are prepared to date a bad boy if he fits all these categories and are willing to share him with other women. So they know that he's a player. They know that he's probably going to play her, but women's ego says, I'm going to be the one to tame him. I'm going to be the one where he doesn't cheat on me. But inevitably, obviously, the guy has so many. If you're a guy who's 6'2", you're athletic, you're well educated, you've got a big dick, you're good looking, you've got a good income, you've got so many women all the time approaching you, you're just not going to stick to one woman. It's just not going to happen, right? It's really, 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 really difficult to be able to do it. I mean, you literally, imagine how many women are constantly approaching David Beckham. Imagine how many women are approaching Idris Elba. I mean, it must be, his DMs must be going nuts, right? So he has a lot of options. So that's the first thing that I would share with you. So it's a Chad problem. Second, because of the internet, men think that they come in contact with women, but they don't. So because of things like OnlyFans, we have a major issue, and actually things like Tinder, we have a major issue in that a lot of you guys think that you have access to women who are 8, 9s, and 10s, when in reality you don't, right? Whilst you can talk to these kinds of women, most men do not qualify to be able to actually be able to date such a woman or be able to maintain such a woman. The average guy in the UK is average. In fact, I would go further and say the average guy to women's standards, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but to the average guy in the UK does not meet the standards that a woman who is an 8, 9 or 10 is expecting. They just don't. And look, if you're a guy who is 8, 9 or 10, why would you want a woman who's a 2 or 3 or 4? You wouldn't. And if you look at the criteria for a woman who is an 8, 9 or 10, right? The criteria for the man that she wants, most men don't fit in that category. In fact, let me tell you what kind of a woman who's an 8 or 9 wants. A woman who is an 8, 9 or 10 wants a man who, number one, is wealthy. You need to be rich, okay? Because she's beautiful. She's the best of the best. So she wants somebody, either number one, who is got a lot of money or is as good looking as her. Women don't date down. Women don't want, they date down if you've got enough money. This was one of the inconvenient truths that I discovered. I didn't want to hear this because what I discovered was that women are willing to date a guy who is an average guy, who's like a 4 out of 10 if he's rich, right? So that's important for you. That tells you if you're an average guy but you're rich, you are going to get women who are way out of your league. So that's important for you to get. But my point being is, because a lot of us guys, we have access to women on OnlyFans, we can ask them to send us pictures of their feet. We can get them to send us a specialized video. We can go on things like Tinder and we can see a woman, what she likes, what she's interested in. Psychologically, it's made a lot of us think that we're actually seeing and we're interacting with this kind of woman, when in reality we're not, right? The average guy hasn't actually met and interacted with women, right? If I looked at your life and we went back for the last 5 years and we looked at how many women as a guy you've approached, you've gone up to them, you've started a conversation, you've tried to court them, you've tried to date them. Most guys, the number isn't very high, right? Most guys just haven't spoken to a lot of guys in real life. And so the issue that you've got is obviously real. I was actually saying this to a guy, I was saying this to Roland. I said this to a guy, Roland, recently, that, look, Roland, the issue that you have is you've spent so much time. I was actually giving this to him on a different example. I was saying to Roland, you have spent so much of your time on the internet listening to Alan Watts, listening to red pill content, listening to motivational stuff. The issue is you've not actually put any of this into practice, right? Because a lot of the people who you're listening to, like Alan Watts has the level of wisdom that he has because he's lived life. He's spent 40 years of working on his, not even 40 years, more than that. He spent like 50, 60 years living life, making failures, building businesses, becoming successful, dating, getting married, marriage failing. And that is how he reached the level of wisdom that he's managed to reach. The issue is that Roland is spending loads of his time listening to Alan Watts, and he thinks that that is what's going to give him experience. That's what's going to give him clarity. It's going to give him wisdom. No, it's part of it, but where you're going to gain the most experience, the most learning, is by actually doing it. You're going to learn more about how women work, what they like, what they don't like, how to interact with them by actually speaking to them, than versus going online on YouTube and listening to a bunch of guys telling you how women work. Does that make sense what I mean by that? And so what I've seen is that a lot of guys, part of the reason why we're single is because we're just not talking to enough girls. We're just not going and interacting with women, which is a major problem. 3, a lot of guys don't meet the bare minimum requirements that women want. Right, I talked about this earlier on. As I said to you, the ideal man that a woman wants is a guy who's about 6'2", athletic, well-educated, is a family man, has a big dick, is good-looking, and has a good income. Okay, that's pretty much the ideal man that a woman wants. Here's the problem. Most guys don't even come close to this. Now, forget about the genetic stuff like being 6'2", because you can't exactly control being 6'2". You can't exactly control how good looking you are. But let's look at the things that men can control. Men can control how athletic they are, how much they work out, what sports they're engaged in. Men can control their education. Men can control their character. Men can control their income. But most guys don't even meet the criteria for this. I mean, if you look today, there are more women graduating out of university with a degree than there are men, right? And women who have if you're a woman and you have a master's degree, women do not date down. If you're a woman and you have a master's degree, you are not going to date a guy who is less than a master's degree because they're not on your level. And this is how I hear women say. A woman here says, this is what I hear women say. They say, why in the world would I date a guy who is not driven enough to go and get a master's degree, who's not driven enough to go and get himself well educated? Why would I date him? Right? And what I've had to realize is that men, we obviously will date down. We will date a woman who works in McDonald's, who works in KFC, as long as she's fit. We don't give a crap, right? So our metric for what we want in a spouse is different to what women want, because part of what women want is that biologically, from a Darwinian perspective, women want a man who can provide. They want to feel safe. Why? Because from a Darwinian perspective, women know that at some point, from a biological perspective, that they are probably going to want kids. If they're going to want kids, it means that they're going to have to, when women have kids, they're very vulnerable, right? Because they can't go to work, they need money, they need to be able to, and they need to be protected from a biological perspective. So therefore, they need a guy who is a leader, they need a guy who's got a good income, and they need a guy who they know is going to have really good genes so that their child can be able to actually find a mate in the future, right? And obviously, the more uglier you are, the less chance there is for you to find a mate in the future, which is part of the reason why women want a good-looking guy, or a guy with good genes, or a guy who is fit, blah, 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 blah. Most guys don't even come up to the bare minimum. Most guys don't even meet this criteria. And as a result, a lot of guys are single. You don't even have an entry. You don't even meet the bare minimum for most women. So most women just aren't even interested. You can't even talk to them because you don't even meet their bare minimum requirements. And so what I would share with you, look at this. I say to people, do what you can with the best that you've got. But most guys are not doing the best that they can with what they've got. You know, I was looking at, I was doing some maths before as I was preparing for this, and I was saying that if you're a guy today and you are working less than 40 hours a week, you're taking the piss. You're taking the piss. Because what the hell are you doing with your time if you're working less than 40 hours a week? Here's how I figured it out. If you're working about 40 hours a week and you're being paid £10 per hour, that means every month you're earning about £1,800. Now, if you take tax from that, you'll probably earn, and national insurance, you're probably earning about £1,500. That's nothing, right? What I say to you is, and here's what makes it worse. And you're not even athletic. Now, if you were only working 40 hours, were earning £1,800, but you were working on your character every day, you were spiritually well growth, you were going to therapy, and you were athletic, and you had a great body, do you know what? I'd forgive you. But most guys don't even meet that criteria. What they're doing is they're going home and playing video games and getting high, right? That's what they're doing. And that's the basis why most women don't want you. So what I would say to you is, as a bare minimum, as a single guy, you need to be working at least 50 hours a week. That extra 10 hours a week makes a big difference. It takes your money up to a different level. And most guys don't meet that kind of criteria. And when they do, they separate themselves from the rest of the crowd. So as a bare minimum, if you're anywhere between 20 and about 35, the bare minimum, if you're a single guy, that you should be working is at least 50 hours. As a minimum. You can't even compete if you're working less than that, because you're just not going to be able, unless obviously you've got a certain trade where you're being paid £50 an hour, £60 an hour, then it's different, or you've got like a skill. But the average guy doesn't have a skill. We don't have a trade. So therefore, we're not earning a decent amount of money. So I wanted to talk about that. Here's the other thing as well, which I think is really important, which, before I finish that, is a lot of guys, here's what would separate you from a lot of other guys. To own your own home, to have a huge amount of savings or to be highly educated. Those three things every man can control. Every man can go and get himself a skill or get well educated. Every man can have savings and every man can own his own home. You are so much more attractive to a woman when you have those three things. And most of us guys don't even come close to that. We have no savings, we're living paycheck to paycheck. We're not well educated or skilled in an area where we can create a decent amount of money for ourselves. Decent amount meaning over £2,000. Anything below £2,000 is nothing. You don't even count because most guys are earning about 1,500. So therefore, your average if you're earning 1,500. And to own your own home. To own your own home is such a big advantage I cannot explain to you. And most guys, if you really wanted to, if you gave up everything for 3 years and you worked full time and all you did is go to work, come home, you'd be able to own your own home. But most guys won't do it because you want to get high, you want to play video games, you want to buy the latest Xbox, you want to go partying, which means your money dwindles down and down and down and down, and then you become more and more about a 4 out of 10 in terms of your in the dating world. The other thing that I wrote down here is that women's standards are obviously higher. Right? There's no doubt about that. Women want more because women have access. The world has become globalized now, so women have access to more men. Women now can get men to pay for their feet pictures. They can send their underwear to a man and the man will pay £100 for it. Right? Women can now be liked by men, rich men in Atlanta, in Egypt, in Dubai. Therefore, women have more options. Right? Historically speaking, the only access to men that women had were those people in their local town. Because you wouldn't obviously marry, like historically, you wouldn't marry somebody who you don't know. And the only way you'd know about a family and how much money they have and their history and their status is that through word of mouth. You'd need to know about them through your family, through the community. But today, women can pretty much gain access to any man that they want. Whether the guy be in New York, he be in Dubai. And so therefore, as a man today in your community, if you want a woman in your community, you would need to be doing very well to stand out because all the other guys are pretty much about a 4 out of 10 to women's standards, if that. Most men are not 6'2", most men are not athletic, most men are not well educated. Well educated means that you have a minimum of a degree. You can't say you're well educated if you don't have a degree. Now you can be well self-educated and not. Do you understand? There are some guys who are like entrepreneurs who are self-educated who didn't go to university, but you would stand out anyway naturally if you are like that. Most guys are not family guys, meaning that they do not have really strong character. Most guys don't have a really good income. Most guys don't have huge dicks. Like most guys don't even fit the bill. So it's no surprise that most of us guys are single. Just something for you to think about. The last thing that I wrote down here is rejection. Women don't approach. Up until about 4 years ago, I did not understand how much more differently women are raised than men are. See, I thought about 4 years ago, up until about 4 years ago, that if a woman liked you, she would just approach you. She'd say, "Hi, Cass, how you doing? I'm like, do you want to go out for a drink? Whatever." That is not how women are brought up. Women are brought up to basically be innocent, to be hard to get. Like, as women are told, play hard to get, play innocent, play difficult. So therefore, and also don't approach men. Okay, approaching men is seen as aggressive, is seen as like too promiscuous. Therefore, you have to wait for the man to approach you. Women are told this from a young age: do not approach men. So therefore, here's a problem: most guys today do not approach women. We just don't. Why? Because of obviously we got rejection. Rejection, I love what Jordan Peterson said. Jordan Peterson said that from a biological perspective, when you're rejected by a woman, it basically is the equivalent to them saying, "I don't want to carry your genes. I don't want your offspring." And so that's why rejection hurts so much. Because it's basically saying, I don't want to have your kid. In fact, this is actually one of the things that I learned. I learned that a woman can date. It is one thing for a woman to date you and be their partner. It is a very different thing for a woman to have your child. Women regard who they have a child with higher, and men regard who they marry higher. I didn't realize this. right? Men will have a child with any woman, practically, as long as she's all right and not nuts. But men won't marry any woman because if you get divorced from her, you're gonna have to give 50% of her, of everything that you own to her. Whereas women, because they become so vulnerable when they have children and they want to have the best genes, because they're gonna have to they want to ensure that their child can find or can also have offspring. From a Darwinian perspective here, women are very careful about who they marry. Who they have a child with. And the guy has to be able to provide. So if a woman sees that you can't take care of her, she definitely knows you can't take care of the offspring. Something for you to think about. But basically, part of the reason is that a lot of guys just don't approach women today. Just guys, we don't approach women. And therefore, we don't get as a higher chance of actually finding somebody who we like. You know, it's one thing, you know, if you're online and you're on Tinder or Hinge or any of these apps, you are going to be based on your looks and what you write on your profile, because that's all you can be judged on. So what makes men obviously stand out from the crowd is how their character, right? Because some women will go for a guy, many women will go for a guy who's a good guy but is average looking. Here's a problem. You can't show your character online. So therefore, or your personality or your charisma. Some guys are funny, but they're just overweight. And so if you're overweight and you want to have a higher chance with a woman, and you know that your advantage is you being funny, that means you're going to have to approach more women in real life than relying on online. Which means that you're going to have to risk being rejected a lot. And a lot of guys just aren't willing to do that. So that's what I think, anyway, is leading to why so many men are single today. Some of the reasons. There's more, obviously, but those are some of the ones that I wanted to share with you. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Comment below. Send me a message. And again, if you want to help support me get to 1,000 subscribers by June, guys, please like and subscribe to my channel. You would be an absolute legend. Thanks for watching, guys. See you soon. Bye for now.